Last time we reminded ourselves who other than God existed in the beginning. He had created a huge number of spirit messengers, angels, to do his will, equipped with the knowledge and ability to fulfill what he gave them to do. And they were led by the most able, the most powerful of their number, Lucifer. And they were witnesses to the incredible beginning of all things, as we know them to be. The beginning, when God began his creation from nothing. No matter, no energy. And we left the story with the Spirit ready to bring order out of the uninhabitable chaos and darkness and emptiness. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, the narrative starts into the specifics of God creating the universe as we know it. And significantly, creation is described as an act of communication. Then God said, speaking things into existence immediately and exactly as he intended. The first thing he spoke into existence, of course, was light. Into that swirling, chaotic darkness came light with all the implications. Illumination, yes, but energy and potential for life and growth. And all it symbolizes about God's revelation of himself through creation. Knowing he would create beings with eyes that would need light to see and light for warmth, a world of light for us. And as for each of his creative acts to come, God noted that the light he'd spoken into existence was good, as it says here in Genesis chapter 1, verse 4. He's telling us in his narrative that everything he made was that way. He's saying, it's who I am. I am good. The things I make are good. What I speak into existence is good in every possible way. Good and perfect to me and for you. I cannot do things otherwise. I don't make flawed things. It's not who I am. So continuing the story in Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, God divides light and darkness. The planet which would be home to the human race, which would mean so much to him and also cost him so much, would spin in space for as long as he wanted it to, half light and half dark. Significantly, there were no other planets yet, no sun, no moon, no stars. So light, now ordered into its designated time to illuminate the earth, was not the product of any source. God, right there at the beginning of his narrative, is letting us know that he is not subject to even the most fundamental laws of thermodynamics. He is their author. Humans only discover and describe whatever systems he embedded. So he could make light without a source. He could have the earth partially dark and partially light without a sun and planetary rotation as a cause. He is the great cause, the light maker, the initiator. He's the story writer and teller. God continues then bringing order from the chaos, which is something that he does. It's who he is. He commands, he declares that there will be space with water below, still covering the planet, and a layer above. Each day, more and more order appearing out of the chaos. Now on the third day, the oceans are pushed into place by his command, and dry land appears, and mountains, islands, and slopes and plains come into existence. And the planet is starting to look a bit more habitable now. And God declares that everything is good, it's perfect, just what he's after. But it's still barren, there's no life. And as well as being a communicating God, a God of light, he's also a God of life. Life is what he's about. He gives life and delights in life. So now, as recorded here in Genesis chapter 1, verse 11, he describes plant life. Then God said, let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds then will produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came. So the words that he uses here are themselves alive and productive. They're fruitful. So that by the end of the third day of creation, the planet is covered in plant life, in trees and shrubs and flowers, and importantly, with seeds that will reproduce the same genera, the same species and families of plants. The potential for self-propagating life is contained in each, and each one is a small testimony to the creative power of God's voice. This isn't blind chance here. This is careful, planned, intentional creation. Now, on the fourth day of creation, the planets come into being at God's spoken word. From the small and specific detail of plant life, some on a microscopic scale, to the mind-blowing scale of the universe containing billions of stars and perhaps infinitely big. We simply don't have scales to measure or scales of reference, points of reference that make any real sense of it. And in all of that, the sun and moon and stars were created that are exactly what is needed for life to flourish on this little planet we call Earth. Because God, the communicator, the light and life giver, is also loving. He was preparing a place for us, for humans. Somewhere orderly and habitable, a home. So now, continuing his story, he fills the oceans and rivers and lakes with creatures and birds that fly above the planet. The variety and beauty are astounding. And when we see these things and call them beautiful, that's because God created them and us to see them in that way. Beauty is a concept without meaning unless it's something invested by God in both the object and the subject. The story of science sees no beauty. It has no room for beauty. The physical world, and we in it, are reduced in that story to systems of particles and blips of energy, the product of chance or some incoherent survival force. So this first part of the story ends on the sixth day with the creation of animals in Genesis chapter 1, verse 24 and 25. Let's read that. Then God said, "Let the earth produce every sort of animal, each producing offspring of the same kind, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals." And that's what happened. God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock, and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Again, with the inbuilt DNA models that will reproduce themselves generation after generation, unique and consistent, an incredibly diverse, wonderful world of creatures of all shapes and sizes. So this part of the narrative of who he is was told and continues to be told day after day in every corner of the world, sometimes seen by humans, but often carried out in the depths of the oceans, in the far reaches of the universe, on a scale too small for us to see, or in jungles and deserts with no human witness at all. A testimony to the creative power and brilliance of our God. But for all its diversity, its beauty and complexity, and though God said it was all good, he was pleased with it, it was perfectly what he wanted, all of this is just background for what is about to come. God is about to create a race of beings for which the planet was now ready. And that's where he chose to take his story next.